I was 19 when I came home from college for winter break, and I remember feeling like a guest in my own house. Nothing had changed on the surface. Same quiet suburban street. Same neatly trimmed lawns. Same streetlights that buzzed faintly when the temperature dropped. But something about being back made everything feel unfamiliar, like I was seeing it all for the first time. My sleep schedule was completely ruined from college, so I stayed up late most nights. My bedroom was on the second floor, facing the street, and I usually sat in bed with my lights off, scrolling on my phone. That's why I noticed the car. It was close to midnight when I first saw it. At the very end of our dead-end street, just before the cul-de-sac, a dark SUV sat parked at the curb. The headlights were off, but I could tell the engine was running from the faint vibration and low hum that carried through the cold air. At first, I didn't think much of it. People visited neighbors. Maybe someone had pulled over to take a call. I went to sleep. I woke up around 2 a.m. thirsty and went downstairs for water. As I passed the front window, I glanced outside. The car was still there. Same spot. Same angle. Engine still running. That's when the unease started. Not fear, just confusion. Who sits in a running car on a dead-end street for hours? The next morning it was gone. I forgot about it until 2 nights later. Same SUV. Same spot. This time I watched longer. 10 minutes passed. Nothing changed. No doors opened. No interior lights flickered on. No phone glow. Just a silent car idling in the dark. When I shifted my weight near the window, the brake lights flashed red for a split second. I froze. I stepped back. The lights went dark. I moved forward again. They flashed. It felt deliberate. Over the next week, the pattern repeated. The car appeared sometime after midnight and stayed until just before sunrise. But what really unsettled me was that every few nights, it moved closer, from the end of the street, to halfway down, to directly across from our house. That's when I noticed something that erased any doubt I had left. The windshield never fogged up. It was winter, freezing cold. Anyone sitting inside for hours would have caused condensation. But the glass stayed perfectly clear. One night, at exactly 2:17 a.m., my phone buzzed. Motion detected, front door camera. I opened the app immediately. The SUV was gone, but the motion alert kept triggering. Then I saw it. A tall shadow passed slowly through the far edge of the camera's frame. No details, just a shape. Upright. Human-shaped. It stopped directly beneath my bedroom window. I lay there, heart pounding, staring at the ceiling. The alerts eventually stopped. The car never came back. Months later, my parents sold the house. A few weeks after the new owners moved in, my mom received a message. This might sound strange, but did someone use to park in your driveway late at night? We never had an answer. I've always preferred being alone outdoors. Not because I dislike people, but because silence did something to my head that nothing else could. When you're deep enough into the woods, the world feels smaller, simpler. No notifications, no conversations, just your own breathing and the sound of your footsteps against dirt and leaves. That's why hiking became my routine. There was one trail in particular I knew better than any other. A loop just under 6 miles long, tucked into a protected forest area about 30 minutes from town. I'd walked it dozens of times, sometimes early in the morning, sometimes right before sunset. I knew every bend, every incline, every fallen tree that never quite got cleared away. That evening, I arrived at the trailhead just before dusk. The parking lot was mostly empty. One pickup truck sat near the far edge, dusty and old, with no one inside. I didn't think much of it. The weather was cool but clear, and I wasn't planning on staying long. Just enough time to clear my head before dark fully set in. I locked my car, checked my phone, low signal as usual, and started down the trail. The first mile was uneventful. Birds settling into the trees. The crunch of gravel under my boots. The air smelled damp, like rain from earlier that day. I put one earbud in and played music quietly, more for background noise than anything else. About 20 minutes in, I heard footsteps behind me. At first, it barely registered. Trails echo sometimes. Sound carries oddly through trees. I assumed someone else had entered the loop and was walking at a similar pace. Still, instinct made me slow down slightly. The footsteps slowed too. I stopped walking altogether. The sound stopped. I turned around. The trail behind me was empty. No movement, no voices, just trees and the fading light. I waited a few seconds, then continued. Within moments, the footsteps returned. Same rhythm as mine, same spacing. That's when unease crept in. Not fear yet, just awareness. I pulled my earbud out and listened more carefully. The sound wasn't coming from far behind. It was close, too close for someone I couldn't see. I told myself they were just keeping distance. But then I stepped off the trail to the right, pretending to adjust my boot. The footsteps didn't stop. They continued straight ahead, passing where I should have been walking. But no one walked by. The trail in front of me remained empty. I stood there longer than I should have, heart pounding harder than I wanted to admit. Eventually, I convinced myself I was imagining things and continued forward. That was my first mistake. As the forest grew darker, my phone started acting strange. The music cut out randomly, then restarted, then paused again. When I checked my screen, there was no signal at all. Not unusual out here, but still unsettling. That's when I noticed something off about the trail markers. The loop was marked clearly, colored ribbons tied to trees at regular intervals. I'd followed them countless times, but now one of them was missing. In its place was duct tape, gray, wrapped tightly around the trunk. I stopped. That wasn't right. A few yards ahead, another ribbon was replaced with duct tape. Then another. Someone had deliberately altered the markers. I considered turning back, but something about the silence behind me made that feel wrong. Like turning around would be acknowledging something I wasn't ready to face. So I kept going. The forest felt different now. Heavier. The natural sounds I was used to, birds, insects, were gone. The air smelled strange too. Sharp. Metallic. Then I smelled smoke. Not campfire smoke. Electrical smoke. I froze. That smell doesn't belong in the woods. I scanned the trees, tried to locate the source. That's when I heard breathing. Not mine. It came from behind me. Slow. Shallow. Controlled. Close enough that I could hear the faint hitch between breaths. I turned around fast. Nothing. No one. I backed away slowly, every nerve in my body screaming at me to leave. That's when I heard running. Heavy footsteps pounding the ground, coming toward me. I didn't wait to see who or what it was. I ran. Branches tore my arms and face. Rocks slipped under my boots. I nearly fell twice, but caught myself without stopping. I didn't follow the trail anymore. I just ran in the direction I thought would lead back to the road. Behind me, the running continued. Not gaining, not falling behind, matching my speed. I burst out of the trees and onto the asphalt road, lungs burning, legs shaking. I didn't stop until I reached my car and slammed the door shut. I sat there shaking, staring at the tree line. Nothing emerged. I drove home in silence. 2 days later, the park posted notice. A hiker had gone missing on that same trail. They never found them. I never went back. This happened when I was 15, during one of the worst periods of my life. My parents were in the middle of a bitter divorce. The kind where nothing is explained to the kids, but you still feel the tension in every room. One afternoon, my mom told me I'd be staying with my great-uncle for a few weeks while things got sorted out. I didn't argue. I was exhausted emotionally and mentally, and I just wanted distance from everything. My great-uncle lived alone in an old house on the outskirts of town. I'd only met him a handful of times growing up. He was quiet, polite, and always seemed distracted, like his attention was split between the present moment and something else only he could see. When we pulled into his gravel driveway, I remember thinking how isolated the place was. No close neighbors, just trees, overgrown hedges, and an aging two-story house with a sagging porch. The first night there, after my mom left, he showed me around. The house felt bigger on the inside than it looked from the outside. Narrow hallways, high ceilings, floors that creaked no matter how carefully you stepped. The air had that old house smell, dust, wood, and something faintly sour. When we reached the basement door, he stopped. "Don't use the guest room down there," he said flatly. I waited for an explanation. It didn't come. I nodded and followed him upstairs. He set me up in a bedroom at the end of the hall. It was simple but comfortable enough. Clean sheets, a small desk, a window that looked out into the dark tree line. That first night, I didn't sleep well. Sometime after midnight, I woke up to a sound beneath me. Footsteps. Slow, heavy, deliberate. At first, I assumed my uncle was awake and moving around downstairs. But the footsteps didn't sound random. They followed a pattern, back and forth, over and over again, like someone pacing the same path repeatedly. I checked the time. 1:14 a.m. The pacing continued for at least half an hour before stopping abruptly. The next morning at breakfast, I asked him about it. "Do you walk around at night?" I asked casually. He didn't look up from his coffee. No, that was it. No follow-up. No explanation. That night, the footsteps came back. Same time. Same pattern. By the third night, I noticed something else. Every morning, there were muddy footprints on the basement stairs. They led up. I asked him about those too. He stared at them for a long moment, then wiped them away with a rag. "Probably tracked in from outside," he said, but the basement had no exterior entrance. I started paying closer attention after that. The basement door was always locked. Not just closed locked. Thick old lock, the kind you'd expect on a shed, not a bedroom. One afternoon, when my uncle was out, curiosity got the better of me. I tried the handle. Locked. I leaned down and looked through the keyhole. It was dark inside, but I could see furniture. A bed, a dresser, a chair pulled into the corner facing the wall. That night, the footsteps were louder. They stopped directly beneath my room. I sat up in bed, heart pounding, listening. Then I heard breathing. Slow, controlled, not muffled by walls or distance. Like someone standing directly below me, breathing upward through the floorboards. I didn't sleep at all. The next day, I called my mom and told her everything. She went quiet. Then she said, "Don't talk about it with him anymore." I asked why. "It's a sensitive situation," she said. "Just stay in your room at night." That was when I realized something was being deliberately kept from me. A few nights later, I woke up around 2 a.m. to use the bathroom. As I walked back down the hallway, I noticed the basement door was slightly open, just an inch. I stood there staring at the darkness beyond it. Then I saw movement, a faint light, like a flashlight beam, sweeping slowly across the basement walls. Someone was down there. I went back to my room and locked the door. The next morning, the basement door was locked again. That was my breaking point. That night, I packed a bag and slept in my car in the driveway. My uncle didn't question it. He just nodded when I told him I was leaving early. 6 months later, the house burned down. The fire department ruled it accidental. But one detail stuck with me. The basement door had been barricaded from the outside. I'm not someone who scares easily. I've watched horror movies alone in the dark, read stories that made other people scream, and hiked alone in the middle of nowhere. But what happened to me a few years ago made me reconsider just how alone you can ever be, and how quickly normal things can turn into something sinister. It started during a weekend trip my friends and I planned. We were all in college, looking to escape the city for a few days. One of them had a family cabin tucked deep in the woods, far enough from the nearest town that you couldn't see another house if you tried. Perfect spot, or so we thought. When we arrived, it was mid-afternoon. The sun was high, the forest around the gravel driveway vibrant and green, birds chirping. I remember thinking how peaceful it looked. The cabin itself was rustic but cozy, wood-paneled walls, a stone fireplace, and a small kitchen that smelled faintly of cedar. It hadn't been used much, which made the dust on the floor expected. No one had mentioned it, but I noticed the back door had a padlock. Odd for a cabin that was supposedly in regular use by the friend's family. I shrugged it off. Probably an old security habit. That first night, after dinner, we settled into the living room with blankets and snacks. I went to the window to look out at the forest. It was dark now, shadows stretching across the trees. And that's when I saw it. A figure, standing at the edge of the tree line. Just standing there, looking straight at the cabin. Motionless. I froze. "Hey," I whispered to my friends. "Do you see that?" They laughed, thinking I was joking. "What?" "A bear," one said. I shook my head. "No, someone." By the time they looked out, it was gone. Just the dark tree line swaying in the wind. I didn't push it. Maybe it really was my imagination. The next morning, I decided to explore the area around the cabin. Trails stretched in every direction. I went alone, telling myself I'd just walk for an hour or so. I liked the solitude. About 15 minutes into the hike, I realized the forest felt different than usual. The air was heavier, and every small sound seemed amplified. The snap of a branch underfoot, the rustle of leaves in the breeze. Then I heard something else. Footsteps. Fast. Crunching over twigs and underbrush. I stopped. Nothing. I kept walking, slow and careful, glancing behind me. Silence. A few minutes later, the footsteps returned. Louder. Closer. I picked up my pace. Then I heard a whisper. No words I could make out, just a low, guttural sound like someone breathing through their teeth. I spun around. Nothing. I broke into a jog back toward the cabin. My heart was racing. When I finally reached the cabin, my friends were sitting on the porch, drinking coffee, talking like nothing had happened. I didn't tell them what happened. They'd think I was exaggerating. That night, I slept with one eye open. Around 2 a.m., I woke up to a creak. The sound of the back door opening. I peeked through the blinds. Empty porch, but the door was slightly ajar. I nudged my friend, whispered, "Check the door." He groaned, half asleep, and slammed it shut, muttering something about the wind. I wanted to believe him. I really did. But sleep didn't come easy after that. The next day, we decided to hike further into the woods. One trail led to a small pond. Another climbed a hill that overlooked the cabin. I chose the hill. Alone. Halfway up, I heard voices. At first, I thought it was one of my friends ahead of me. But the voices were soft, almost chanting, and they didn't sound human. Low, rhythmic. I froze. Something in me said, "This isn't normal." I tried to call out, but my voice caught in my throat. The chanting stopped immediately. Silence. When I looked around, there was no one. I ran back down the trail. By the time I reached the cabin, my friends were packing up to leave. They said they wanted to go into town, grab some supplies. I agreed immediately. As we drove back, I kept glancing at the forest behind us. It seemed darker than before, like it had absorbed the light. Weeks passed. I tried to convince myself I'd imagined everything. Then the messages started. At first, small things. My phone would vibrate in my pocket, but there'd be no notifications. No missed calls, nothing. Just random times, always late at night. One night, the messages were audible. My phone alarmed, and a voice whispered through the speaker. My own voice, saying my name. Clear, terrifying. I threw the phone across the room. It shattered. But the next day, a piece of paper slid under my door. A single sentence. "We saw you at the cabin." I told no one. My friends would think I was losing it. Months later, I returned to the forest alone, against my better judgment. I wanted to know if it had all been in my head. The trail to the cabin was overgrown. Fallen trees blocked paths, I remembered clearly. I pushed through anyway. As I approached the clearing, I saw the cabin. The back door was wide open. Inside, the furniture had been moved. Not just slightly. Chairs stacked in corners. Tables overturned. And on the floor, scratched into the wood. "You shouldn't have come back." I didn't stay. I ran until my legs gave out. I never went back. To this day, I still check the woods whenever I'm alone at night. I can't explain what happened. I don't know who or what was there, but I know one thing. I wasn't alone on that trail.